My name's Alec. Hi, I'm an automation advisor with Salient Process, and helping me out today and performing a demo for you all will be Jose Cadena. He's our sales engineer. For those of you that don't know us, we are Salient Process, and we are an IBM business partner. We support their automation platforms and help with process improvement and operational excellence goals. And of course, a big part of what we do is process mapping. That is kind of the cornerstone of, sorry, some people are still falling in. That's the cornerstone of where we start a lot of our automation projects. All of you being here today are likely Blueworks Live users. And so with this webinar, we wanted to kind of give you another path and another way that you can leverage those maps to make improvements and find more value from all that effort that you've put in from process mapping. So we'll start out today with just a couple questions just to kind of get to know each other. And then we will introduce RPA, give some background there for those who are not familiar with it. We'll talk about the capabilities of RPA, the benefits that it can provide, and how to obtain those benefits with the Blueworks maps you've created. Jose will then cover all of that in a live demo and how you can locate those things within Blueworks Live, and then mirror that into a running RPA bot on an invoice process. And then we'll kind of just discuss some use cases and open things up for conversation. So like I said, first couple questions just to get to know each other. If you can, just hit the thumbs up button if it is a yes. So question one is, are you getting the most out of your Blueworks Live platform? Do you feel you're utilizing all the capabilities? Is there more you wish that you were doing with it now? All right, and then question two, are you currently exploring or using RPA solutions in your organization? Are you here to learn more about how you can utilize Blueworks to find more opportunities? Do you want to get introduced to RPA? What are your goals of being here? If it's a yes to RPA, give us a thumbs up. All right, so let's get into things. Just a general introduction to RPA. So RPA, the origins of it can be traced back to around the 90s when it was used for just simple web scraping and screen scraping. The term RPA hadn't been coined yet. It was kind of just in its infancy. And then in the 2000s is when it became a coined term of RPA, Robotic Process Automation, and it was used in large banks and insurance companies to do large data extractions. The problem with it at this time was it still required large IT environments and complex builds to be able to really utilize it. So it was only at, again, those big insurance companies and banks. And then around 2015 is when we really started to see it become a commoditized product that people were using in many different ways in their businesses, whether it was enterprise-wide, massive companies, mid-market, or small to medium-sized businesses. RPA was really becoming a lot more relevant. And the reason that it became more relevant in the first place is, as we all know, the term digital transformation. In the past few decades, everything has moved onto a virtual we're living in a virtual world of businesses. All the standard practices and processes are done on different systems and platforms. The problem that this created was data became siloed, and it was very difficult to move data between these different platforms and systems. So in steps RPA, that tedious work then fell, of course, on the shoulders of the employees, and they were doing a lot of tedious, repetitive manual work that wasn't adding a ton of value, but still needed to be done. So in steps RPA, and it is able to complete those manual tasks that employees were spending so much time on, and you can kind of think of it as the automated plumbing for your data between systems. So how it works is it is going to complete anything a human can at the desktop level of your computer. how you're doing the process now, it's only going to mimic those clicks and keystrokes. It can do things like making API calls, creating documents, updating your databases, using your desktop applications or web applications, uploading, downloading files, sending emails, anything that is not requiring a lot of nuance and critical thought. And those are the process characteristics that you really want to look for RPA. Things that are highly repetitive, things that you are very high in volume. Again, the minimal nuance, doesn't require a lot of critical thought. And of course, things are well standardized. So when you apply those capabilities of RPA to processes with those characteristics, you're going to get a lot of benefits by giving employees back that time. Their productivity is going to go up. It's going to be more cost efficient. Of course, a robot can work faster than a human can. In the same light, it's going to make less mistakes than a human will. This will increase the throughput, and RPA projects are very scalable. So once you find one opportunity, you can build on it from there. Now to kind of shift into how you can leverage your maps. As I stated at the beginning, we believe that process mapping is extremely important to any improvements you're going to make in your processes, and especially for implementing automation if you want it to be a successful project. So just going through the exercise of documenting your processes, you're going to be able to sit down and talk through, what you guys are doing today and visualizing that, so you can eliminate any, waste where there may be extra steps, and really doing the comparison between the as is and a to be state of what you want things to look like. And then having that standardization is going to be very important to passing any of those tasks on to, whether it be RPA or another form of automation. It's going to be very important to a successfully running bot. And then lastly, optimizing your processes, going through and understanding the data involved and filling your process maps with as much data as possible will allow you to understand what areas may be most advantageous for RPA. So understanding those process maps and the documentation you've done more specifically within Blueworks Live. If you remember back to those characteristics we discussed, you can see kind of a direct translation within Blueworks Live of where to find those. So anything with a lot of systems, where there's many systems involved, is going to be a great place for RPA to be able to move data around. High work time and high wait time is going to show you some time-consuming tasks where employees may be doing more work than they need to. High volume will indicate a lot of repetition, where people are doing the same thing over and over again. It's a great opportunity to pass that work onto a bot. And then any loopbacks can show where there's some rework going on. Again, where employees are spending more time than they need to doing tedious things that can be passed on to an RPA bot. So some of the key features that you'd be looking for in Blueworks Live that is going to help you identify these characteristics in the process is going to be the analyze feature. Using your snapshots so that you can see an as is and a to be state, and then just your data fields, making sure you have as much data plugged in as possible is going to just ensure that you're making the right decision and implementing RPA in the right place so that it's going to be successful. So with that, I will pass this over to Jose, and he will be able to kind of show you those features live and how you can go into Blueworks Live and find these certain characteristics that will be good candidates for RPA.
Thank you, Alec. So yeah, let me share my screen so we can jump right into the demo. So as Alec was mentioning, today we're going to start the demo kind of like probably where you, most of you who are Blueworks Live users are currently in, which is with a process map. A process flow already mapped and completed. For today's demo, we prepare an invoice process use case. Since most of you are already familiar with IBM Blueworks Live, we're not gonna go into too much detail about the features of the tool, but instead we're gonna go in deep into the use case to kind of like understand and better and have like a better context of what we see on the RPA bot running in a couple of minutes, right? So yeah, just to start, you can see that we already have a full process map completed. It's an end-to-end process. We can see that this process is currently manual from end to end, and we have multiple teams involved, right? Starting the process with submitting invoice step by the vendor, going through the different teams like the accounts payable, where he has to do the review invoice and the process invoice, the senior accounting having to approve the invoices, and the account doing the release statements and so on, right? Uh, so maybe once we already complete the process flow, just by the actual flow of the process, we are not gonna have like too much information or too much insights about the process to start identifying RPA opportunities. Of course, one of the features of Blueworks Live is that we can start adding some metadata and some information regardless our entire process and some specific activities, so we can start analyzing each of the activities, gain more insight, and once we start studying those kind of like inputs, we can start identifying those opportunities. And it can be either uh, opportunity of automation, but of course the goal today is to kind of like show you where we can start looking for those RPA scenarios where it might fit the best, right? So let's say that we already add some data. What we can use, of course, one of the features from Blueworks Live is going to be the analyze tool, and we can start going through all the metadata that we already included into our process and into our activities, right? Starting by the systems. So if we start analyzing our data, we can see that this is a process that it's involving multiple systems through the entire process. The first one in this scenario will be Invoicely, which is an invoice process application. One thing to mention about this application is that there are no APIs available to kind of like integrate with it in an easy way by just doing a REST API call or something like that. So maybe this could be a great system to interact using IBM RPA, because we don't have to worry about any type of API documentation. As Alec was mentioning, RPA, what it's going to do is to kind of replicate the steps that people are doing day to day to complete those activities, and we can just teach the bot to do those as well as we're currently doing, right? If we continue, we can see that we're also using BAW, Soho Core Drive, and Outlook. So again, there are multiple systems involved. So this might be a good kind of like fit to IBM RPA, because we're gonna interact with the same data going through one system to another, and maybe sending some automatic notifications using Outlook, like the last step, which is notifying the vendor. And maybe we can also automate that step using RPA, depending on the inputs or depending on the data that we read through the process, right? If we keep doing the analysis, maybe we can take a look to the work time and the wait time. We can see that probably this process, it's not a high consuming work time process. You can see that all of the activities are taking 20 minutes max. Yeah, the release payment is like the most consuming of the steps. But if we take a look to the wait time, we can see that some of the activities have to wait at least one day to be completed, right? This might be a signal that and you might notice that this usually happens on the activity that have to go from one team to the other. So maybe this might give us like an insight that there is like a disconnection between those steps. People are not notified that they have to complete those steps. And with a high wait time in our time process, this will might start creating some bottlenecks in it, creating high volume like pending list or pending invoices to be processed in this scenario, and so on. So maybe this could be a great opportunity to start minimizing that wait time and using IBM RPA, because everything is going to be kind of like synchronized and automated, so we don't have to. We will be able to reduce that wait time as minimum as possible, right? If we continue with the analysis, some of the other of the Probably details that we usually look for RPA opportunities is going to be the volume. As Alec was mentioning, if we have a high volume in a process, in an standardized process, so we're going to start to see like a high repetitive task, teams involved in the process that are always going to do kind of like the same process, repeat the same steps. And once they start completing those, maybe the human error can start to appear, right? Because I'm always doing the same process every time. Maybe if it's copy and pasted some data, I can start copy the data in the wrong places, copy the wrong data, you know. So human error will start to appear in it, and maybe we can use also IBM RPA to minimize that error, right? Another great metadata that we can analyze is the inputs and outputs. So if we take a look to the review invoices step and the process invoices step, we'll see like a back and forth of the data that it's required. So the output of the review invoice steps, the outputs of the review invoices step, it's gonna be the same inputs of the process invoice step. So this will give us like a key yeah, like an idea that this is just copy and pasted data from one system into the other, right? Which is going to be the most common use case for RBM RPA. So again, this will be another opportunity of automation for this process. So yeah, if we keep going through all the metadata, we can see that, okay, we already identified that this might be a great fit for an IBM RPA automation for the entire process. What we can do now is also use another feature that it's available in Blueworks Live, which is the snapshots, where we can start creating how do we want our to be to look like, right? How do we want our process to be automated? So we already defined one. So if we take a look to the to be process, we can see that now there is going to be like a new swim lane involved in the process, which is going to be the system swim lane, which is basically all the automation that we're going to apply into our process. You can see that now most of the steps are not human tasks, but are all going to be robot tasks. So they're going to be completely automated. Of course, in the process, we might require still some human intervention, but this is probably not going to be for the entire process. In this scenario, since we're going to do some auto approving to minimize the volume of the amount of invoices that the teams are going to have to process, we saw that for the as-is of how the process is currently working, they're almost processing 100 invoices per day. Once we implement this automation, we can go to only 10 invoices. So the bots are going to take care of 90 of them, and by different scenarios that might happen during the process, maybe there is some additional approval that is required because it's a it's a high amount invoice that we need to process. Then maybe we want to do a double check because there's so probably money involved in it or any other type of reasons that we want someone to process this manually, right? But again, we're gonna do by implementing in this scenario the IBM RPA bot, we might go through a 90% automation of the process. So people are gonna have to worry only about the 10%, giving them some more time, more free time to complete the other steps that they are involved or other different tasks that they have in their day-to-day job, right? So this is how the process is going to look once it's automated. You can see that we can go as detailed as we want for the for the RPA piece, starting by logging into the multiple systems that we're going to use. In this case, it's going to be BAW and Invoicely. Then what the bot is going to do is to validate if there are some invoices available. If there are, then it's just going to start going to go one by one. It's going to review the invoice, pull the data, do the auto approving, process the invoice, and update the reports. Again, if the invoice was auto approved, then there won't be no human intervention. It's just going to send a notification that the invoice was completed. And if there are invoices remaining, it's going to go back to the review invoices step and start the process again for the next invoices available, right? If there are no remain, then it's just going to end the process, right? So yeah, another feature that we can also use here in Blueworks Live, it's going to be the documentation piece, where we can start adding as much details as we want about the implementation of the RPA bot, right? So in here we can maybe if we want to start adding more details about how the bot is gonna behave, we can start adding maybe including some screenshots of the different screens that the bot has to interact with, the URLs that it has to log in, maybe the template of the invoices that is gonna have to process, so we have a better idea of how those are gonna look and which are the data that we wanna pull from those. And the screenshots of the task that the bot is going to complete, right? Another thing could be the different email bodies for the automatic notifications that we want to have. So we can use all this documentation to have like a better reference once we start implementing the actual RPA bot using IBM RPA. We can just go like back and forth with the Blueworks Live and the tool to kind of like create that flow or that RPA process, right? So yeah, we already identified the process, identified some opportunities, and we already set up kind of like the 2B of the process that we want to automate using RPA. And now we can actually go to the start today, which will be the IBM RPA tool, right? Which is what we're seeing right now. So this is gonna be like the developer side of the tool. So it's the IBM RPA Studio. The way you start building the bots, it's gonna be by using commands, which those commands basically are gonna be replicating what you will do on the desktop level to complete your steps, right? You can see that those commands can be as starting a browser, navigating to a specific URL, setting some values into a specific fields of those browsers, and so on. And of course, this is the bot that we just described using Blueworks Live. You will see that the flow that we define as the to be of the process, it's kind of like match with the way we defined the commands of the RPA bot, right? So you can see that the first step that the bot is going to do is going to be to log in into BAW, which is the same first step that we defined in the Blueworks Live. So this is where, again, we can use Blueworks Live as a reference to start defining kind of like the flow or the different commands that we want the bot to run every time we want it to be executed, right? So yeah, I'm not gonna go into too much detail of all the commands. We're just gonna actually see the bot in action. So I'm just gonna run it manually in this case. You will see that I'm not gonna do anything with my hands. Everything is gonna be automated. Once the process starts, it's gonna go through all the commands that we define, and it's gonna follow up those one by one. So you can see that the first thing that it's doing, it's logging into one of the applications that are involved in the process. In this case, it's IBM BAW. So it's opening the new browser, going to that specific URL, setting the username and the password, uh, and continue with and clicking in the right buttons that we need to. All right. Now it's going to the second one, which is the invoice lead, which is where all the invoices are available. You can see that it's doing some clicking around it, and it's already in the invoice piece. So right now it's going through one by one the invoices that are available. You can see it went to the first one, it downloaded it, and right now it's pulling all the information from that first invoice, right? You'll see that this is gonna run a little bit quick because that's the idea of RPA. Not only automate that, but minimize the amount of time that we spent completing those tasks. But yeah, what it did was to pull the data from that first invoice, get some information like the invoice number, PO number, company name, country, amount, and the URL, and it's completed it and pasted it into that second system, right? So once it completed the first one, now it's going to the second one since we still have some invoices available. Again, it's going to do the same process, starting by downloading the actual invoice. It's going to save it in a specific location that we define. This could be either a SharePoint folder, Word Drive folder, a local folder. However, we want the process to be, right? But again, it's gonna do the same process. So you already download the invoice, you already pull the data. Now it's gonna start to type in all that data that it pulled from the invoice, into the second system to complete the task, right? So yeah, for this scenario, we only set up like 5 invoices. It's already on the third one, but as we saw on the Blueworks Live, there might be a scenario where we need to process 100 invoices every day, right? It's gonna be always doing the same steps of downloading, reading, copying, pasting. If it's only 5, well, that might look like an easy job, but once we go into high volumes, that's where the human error can start to appear. So maybe if I'm doing this process manually, I might be able to download the invoices correctly, but once I start to try and copy and paste in the data, maybe I start to put the PO number in the invoice number or switch those values. Maybe I start to copy and paste the amounts wrongly because I'm already tired of always doing the same process. Of course, in a more realistic scenario, the kind of like the process will be a little more complex. So it will be more data involved, more analysis that it will be required to process or to continue with the process itself. So that's where the human error can start to appear. Well, by using an RPA bot, we don't need to worry about that. I mean, the bot, it's always going to run 24/7 if we want to. It's not going to get tired of doing the same process. It's not going to get tired of reading always the same invoices. It's always going to repeat the process as we teach it. So it's going to help to minimize that human error that might be involved by doing the process manual, right? So I think this will be the last invoice. Uh, sorry. So yeah, this is the last invoice. So again, it took like 4 minutes to complete those 5 invoices and the entire process. This is just because you can see that we added some delays through the process because to make it look more easy to the user to understand what is happening. Usually, to process those 5 invoices, once we set up the bot and once we teach it to do the process, it could only take 1 minute to process the entire package of 5 invoices. Of course, that's going to depend on the complexity of the process, the complexity of the steps that it needs to do, but it will definitely gonna reduce the like the work time of the entire process, and it's gonna allow us to either process more invoices daily, or it's gonna help to kind of like give that free time back to the user that was in charge of this process to complete other steps or other tasks that they have to for different processes or for the same process, right? One thing to mention is that for this scenario, well, I had to run the bot manually. This is because it's just a demo, but usually the way it's gonna work is that we can either set up some triggers for the bot. So for example, if we wanna run a bot whenever we receive a specific email that it has like a subject, like a specific subject, we can define those type of triggers to execute the bots whenever we need to, or we can also schedule the bots to run on a schedule, of course. So if you need the bot to run every day at 6 a.m. in the morning, you just set up the bot to that schedule, and the bot is going to run in the background at the specific time that you're defining, so you don't have to worry about keep track of if the bot did it run, did everything correctly. I mean, everything is going to happen in the background. Of course, we can set up some notifications where you can know once the process was finished by the bot, if there were some errors that might appear, like there was some missing information on the invoice, so we want to notify that, and we don't want the bot to complete the process. The tool is pretty customizable, so we can set up all those like exception handles or different scenarios, different paths to depending on the use case and so on, right? And the third one is that you can run the bots manually as I just did it. So we have those three options. It could be by triggers, by a schedule, or by running those manually. Of course, we want to avoid the manual process of have to run the bots. Usually, the schedule is the most common path that our customers go with. So again, you will have the schedule, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. And yeah, the last thing is that the tool is pretty customizable. So we saw that it interact with two specific systems, BAW and Invoicely. That doesn't mean that it can only interact with those two. It can be applicable to any system that you currently use. It could be a homegrown application, or it can be different web browsers or different web applications. So that's one of the advantages of our IBM RPA, that it's pretty customizable, so it can be applied to any type of use case or scenario, depending on the needs of what the bot needs to do, right? So yeah, with that, we just saw the kind of like the two scenarios in Blueworks Live, and we actually see the bot running itself. So I'm gonna hand it back to Alex so he can do the close up of the meeting.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jose. So yeah, just to wrap things up, sorry, I'm trying to make sure I share the right screen. You guys see my screen?
Not yet.
Oh. Sorry. It's not the right one.
There you go. You're good.
Okay. Awesome. Cool. So thank you, Jose. Yeah. Just to wrap things up, we know that you guys, some of you who may be looking into RPA, what we discussed may not be easy to grasp right away. As far as what certain process characteristics are good for RPA and what the capabilities are, we do believe that those are the best ways to find your own RPA use cases, is understanding, where to look and what to look for. But just to kind of give some starting point around some common use cases we see, a very good one we did last year was with Primanti Brothers. They're a sandwich shop out of Pittsburgh, and they had a sales and labor tracking report that needed to be done every day. It was done across 5 locations. It took almost an hour every morning. And so we came in and helped them do some mapping within Blueworks. We put an RPA bot in to complete those 8 steps. Now, no one in the company has to worry about that process. The report is just dropped in their inbox when they get to work in the morning. It saved them over 2,000 hours in that first year and over $80,000. And as we mentioned earlier, RPA is super scalable. So they started out there and they're up to their 10th bot all around, kind of the same processes in the sales and finance department. So that is kind of one of the big ones that we've worked on that's been very successful. And then some other use cases that you can look for if you're looking for a starting point is processing invoices. We see that all the time. Any reporting in sales and finance, lending qualification, automating audits, processing refunds, payroll calculations, data entry into the CRM or any other system. I won't name all of these, but if you'd like to take a screenshot of these just to keep that saved, these are all great places to kind of look to get a start into RPA. So yeah, thank you all so much for coming. Just a quick recap of what we covered. We looked at RPA, the background of what problem it solves for, what it is capable of doing, how to identify processes with the right characteristics, and where to look in your Blueworks Live maps and within the tool to identify these opportunities. Jose showed us a great demo of Blueworks Live and where to utilize those different tools, and then mirroring that into an RPA bot and how that ran an invoice. And we just did a quick discussion on the use cases. So if anyone would like to, discuss this a little bit further with us, we can do a one-on-one analysis. If you have a process in mind that you think might be a good candidate for RPA, we'd love to talk through that with you further. So you can scan this QR code to schedule a meeting. Of course, see a lot of friendly names on here. So if any of you have my email and you want to reach out, please feel free to do so. But yeah, I'd love to open it up for questions. I don't know for sure if we're able to. Okay, awesome. Yeah, you can just drop them in the chat. Yeah, thanks, Michael. So how long to stand up? Of course, this depends on the complexity of the bot. Typically, a standard bot is going to be 80 to 100 hours to 120 hours to build. So this would be around the 2 to 3 month time range would be a good length to look at for one bot. There's no requirements. This is just very helpful information as far as the success of the bot, finding the opportunities. It's all very helpful. As I mentioned, standardizing those processes is going to make sure that the bot has a definite path that it's going to follow. So no specific requirements, but those ones that we discussed, like cycle time, wait time, work time, systems involved, those are some good ones to have in place to understanding where these opportunities might lie.
So yeah, I can take that from Nanoka. So what might be the security policy place on regarding assets in multiple platforms into one RPA process? So yeah, in IBM RPA, there's gonna be available something that is called like the Vault, which is basically a place where all the access information, login information can be securely saved. Everything is gonna be I forgot the word. Everything is gonna be encrypted, and the bot is just gonna reference from the vault whenever it needs to log in into those different applications. So we don't have to worry about sharing maybe the password, the logins, credentials, or anything like that. Currently, multiple systems already have some OAuth authentication required. So if this maybe the code that it's required to log in, it's sent via email, that it's something that can be processed for the bot as well. So that can be also included into the implementation of the bot.
Yeah, thank you, Sydney. Yes, of course. Yeah, cloud-based is the typical route that people take. Typically, on-prem is if there's some serious security requirements needed. All right, awesome. Well, thank you all so much for coming. I really appreciate it. No problem, Michael. We appreciate you coming in. Of course, all the Salient team, thank you guys for coming and supporting. And yeah, hope that we gave you some good ideas for RPA. And look forward to talking with you all soon.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.